Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're going to be studying this. Welcome back to our online video lessons. There's a PowerPoint that goes together with this week's topic. This week's topic, we're going to talk about two different things. The first topic is going to be called common sentence errors, run-on sentences, and comma splices. And the second topic, which I'll talk about later, has to do with something else. It's called using intensifiers, and intensifiers are just adverbs of a special kind. So let's go back to my first topic. My first topic, and this is in the PowerPoint presentation that I'm sending together with this week's video. The first topic is common sentence errors. The two common sentence errors that I'm going to talk about today are run-on sentences and comma splices. Run-on sentences are the situation where you have two simple sentences incorrectly joined with no coordinating conjunction and no comma. This is on page 64. Again, a run-on sentence error is where you have two simple sentences incorrectly joined with no coordinating conjunction and no comma. The example they gave in the book, and it's a very good example, they have the sentence, "My roommate wants to win the Tour de France someday. He spends hours riding his bicycle." In case you don't know, the Tour de France is a famous international bicycle race. It's held in France. So when you read that sentence in your book, and you heard me say it, you notice that there's something wrong with that. There are no coordinating conjunctions there, and there's no comma. To refresh your memory, to make sure you understand what coordinating conjunctions are, you can find the coordinating conjunctions on page 58. The coordinating conjunctions are on page 58, and I think you've seen them before, and I think I talked to you in class before Christmas. Coordinating conjunctions are words such as and, for, but, so, and so on. So coordinating conjunctions help you to put two phrases or two sentences together. This example that I gave you does not have any coordinating conjunctions, and it also does not have a comma. Another kind of sentence error is called the comma splice. A comma splice is two simple sentences incorrectly joined with a comma, but no coordinating conjunction. So in this case, you have a coordinating conjunction, but you do not have, with the comma splice, you have two sentences incorrectly joined. It has a comma, but there are no coordinating conjunctions. There are no words like or, and, for, so. So you need a coordinating conjunction. I'll give you an example. It's in the book. My roommate wants to win the Tour de France someday, comma. He spends hours riding his bicycle. So what's missing here is the coordinating conjunction. There are two ways to fix the two errors that I mentioned to you. One way is to separate the sentences with a period. In other words, you had one long sentence. Let's just make two sentences, put a period at the end of each. For example, one correction is, my roommate wants to win the Tour de France someday, period. He spends hours riding the bicycle, period. This correction is also in your book on page 64. Another way to make a correction is to add or keep the comma and add a coordinating conjunction. For example, as it says in the book, my roommate wants to win the Tour de France someday, comma, so he spends hours riding his bicycle. In this case, so is the coordinating conjunction. And we also had the comma there before. So that is a good correction. Now, you can stop the video whenever you want to if you need to take a break or you want to take a look at the PowerPoint or your textbook. I mentioned these things, they're both in the PowerPoint that I prepared and also in the textbook. Or you can go ahead and keep listening. Okay, the next part is where I want to explain that I've assigned you some assignments for the correcting the run-on sentences and comma splices. On page 65, there are 6 questions, and you have to look at the sentences. You have to write C for correct if you think the sentence is correct, or you write X beside the sentence if you think the sentence is incorrect and make corrections. In some of the questions, there may be more than one possible correction. In other words, there's more than one way to correct the answer. I mentioned that there are 2 different ways to correct the answer, so that's why for some of the questions there could be 2 ways of correcting the mistake. Remember, you have to first write C if the sentence is correct. If you think the sentence is incorrect, then write an X and then make corrections. On page 65, the rest of the questions, they go up to number 10, are there. So on page 65, I want you to do the questions up to number 10. Okay, that's great. So now you can take a break or we can continue listening to my lesson. The next part is the topic of using intensifiers. Now maybe you've never heard of this word intensifiers, or maybe you have. This topic is on page 66. Now what are intensifiers? Intensifiers are words that show a greater emphasis on certain verbs. So intensifiers are adverbs that give a greater emphasis or force to some other words like verbs, because intensifiers are adverbs which give a greater force or emphasis to those verbs. In the textbook, they give you several intensifiers. Intensifiers that they give you there are fairly, rather, quite, very, especially, and extremely. They mention that the book mentions that fairly is a weaker intensifier and extremely is a stronger intensifier. The reason why it's good to know how to use these intensifiers is because sometimes you want to talk about people's occupations or their professions. An occupation or profession are the different things that people do as their job. In the textbook, there's an assignment on page 66 and it continues on page 67. And I'd like you to do this assignment. They give you phrases like number 1, they give you the phrase, is a good public speaker. Then they want you to use that phrase plus use one of the intensifiers on page 66. They gave you 6 different intensifiers. So use one of the intensifiers together with the phrase they give you to make up a sentence. For example, number 1, they give you the phrase, is a good public speaker. So the person in the book wrote, the mayor is an extremely good public speaker. So that makes sense, and you probably know that the mayor of a city, of any city, has to give speeches, so probably he's quite good or extremely good as a public speaker. So for questions 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, think of the kind of person or the occupation or profession that would have to be doing those things that they mention in the phrases. Who would work well with children? That's number 2. What about number 3? Works well with coworkers. And then use one of the intensifiers that they give to finish the question. Now it's very important that every student does all of the assignments that I give every week. You have 7 days to do the assignments. There's should be no problem doing it. If you have any questions after this presentation, after you've thought about it, after you've read the textbook, after you've looked at my PowerPoint, if you have any questions at all, please send me a message. You can send a message to that email address I give in the PowerPoint, or you can send a line message on the line account. So please do one of those. If you don't have any questions and you can do the assignment, please send it to my email. Make a photograph of your assignment. Send it to my email address that I give to you in the PowerPoint. And then I'll correct it, and you can see the corrections, or maybe you didn't have any corrections. In any case, I'll check your work over. Okay, you have 7 days to do that. There should be no trouble for you to do that. Okay, thank you.